16 серпня.
It's August 16, Ukraine Media Center continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Shaprenko, and now we will be talking about the second heat wave in Ukraine, weather threats and warnings from rescuers. Joining us in the studio are Natalia, Ptukha, spokesperson of the Ukrainian Hydrometeorological Center, and Oleksandr, Khorunzhiy, press officer of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Good afternoon. So let's start with the weather, something that is always of concern for the people. Everybody keeps discussing it. Another heat wave is coming, the second heat wave within this summer period. So Miss Natalia, please tell us, where is this heat wave coming from? What are the temperatures we should expect, and how long is it going to stay in Ukraine? Another heat wave. The mass media were writing a lot about it in Ukraine. There was a lot of unverified information. People did not rely upon the official forecast from the hydrometeorological centers, and there were warnings that the heat wave would start in the period starting from the 5th of August. But again, we make short forecasts. You know, the weather is changing and it may be unforeseeable. So we better don't circumvent people. But according to the forecast, we may safely state that yes, starting from tomorrow, the temperature is going to grow. Previously, it was anticyclone influencing the territory of our country, but the air was coming from the northwestern direction. Now this anticyclone is going to withdraw in the southeastern direction, and the low pressure field is going to influence the weather in our country, which means more clouds. But at the same time, the hot air is going to come from the southwest. That will result in hot temperatures in different regions in Ukraine, specifically the south and southwest. So starting from tomorrow, in those regions, we may expect the temperature to grow up to 35-37 degrees. So during the 17th and 18th of August, but by the 21st of August, such temperatures are going to persist in those regions. So the temperature up to 35 is considered to be just high temperature, and tomorrow the temperature is going to grow up to 34 in different regions of Ukraine, but in the south and southwest it may grow above those indicators that are going to persist until 21st, 22nd of August. There is a possibility this tendency may continue, but again, we will have to double check because the weather is changing pretty dramatically, and again, we cannot say it will be quite dry without precipitations, because due to the low pressure field, this hot air, you know, in the second half of the day, the air gets heated, it's going up and is transforming into clouds. Such phenomena may be observed in the west of our country. This is what happens during the hot periods, but probably we can say they may make the situation easier, but after the rain the air gets more humid and it will be more difficult to breathe for the people. What else I can say? In the western regions again and in the southeastern regions, the weather with no precipitations is going to prevail. That will result in high level of fire threat. So starting from tomorrow, in the majority of the regions, The class of fire threat will grow up to 5. It will be a little bit lower in the western regions, but again, it depends on every specific region, every specific meteorological stations. All of the indicators are posted in the website of the Meteorological Center. So, talking about the fire threat level, it's calculated. There are specific techniques to calculate this fire threat level, which includes the summarizing of temperatures plus humidity and other parameters. There's a number of other factors. It's a complex program, a complex software that calculates it, and all those indicators are being summarized to produce some specific indicator that is varying by levels, which means that the fire threat is growing up in different ecosystems. But again, the fire does not erupt by itself. They usually result from human activities, so please take extreme care while handling fires. So thank you. We will be talking about the risk of fires with the representative of State Emergency Service. So let's continue about the weather and the climate. So the peaks like this happen in Ukraine on an annual basis. That's normal, but was this summer real abnormal? And how does the summer in Ukraine compare to the standard, to the something that is considered to be standard for Ukrainians? Well, really, the climate is changing. The climatologists now make a lot of studies, and they focus on the fact that last year and previous year the temperature indicators were way higher comparing to those that were observed previously, and average temperature all around the earth is growing. For example, within the last 12, even 13 years, every month was exceeding the temperature record at least 1 or 1.5 degrees. So it's a threshold that the climatologists identify as critical, and we're coming close to it. It's a really threatening situation that needs to be responded to. For example, there are awareness campaigns held in the world. For example, I'm having this t-shirt. This image represents 150 years of instrumental observations. Each stripe means the temperature observations, and we see that with years the temperature becomes hotter, which is related to the climate change, and climatologists emphasize it. In Ukraine, we see that those heat waves are becoming longer, and duration of the hot days is longer. Meanwhile, the duration of cold days is shorter, and it's not only inherent in Ukraine. This year the absolute maximums were beaten. For example, absolute maximums are temperatures that were never observed in this or that point, like the highest temperature within the history of observations. So both in the west coast of the United States and in the Balkan countries there was abnormal heat documented, as well as in Ukraine. For example, during the previous heat wave in July, a number of records were beaten in Mykolaiv, for example. For Ukraine, for reference, the absolute maximum is 42 degrees centigrade. It was documented in Luhansk on the 12th of August 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So for us, we have not beaten this maximum so far. Hopefully, it's never going to be beaten. Hopefully, this second heat wave, according to the calculations that we have today, according to the forecast that we have, it's not going to be just as intense as the previous one in July, because the one in July was really long lasting. There was an extreme heat, about 40 degrees centigrade in the southern regions. According to our calculations, we don't see anything like this so far. For Kyiv, the absolute maximum is 39.4 degrees centigrade. That was documented on the 30th of July 1936. So yes, such temperatures used to exist before, but hopefully we're not going to reach this indicator. But again, threatening indicators like these so far don't exist in the capital, but the air is going to get higher. Okay, has the climatic summer shifted compared to the calendar year? Well, meteorological summer, putting it into more correct technical terms. So we need to have additional research to identify the correlation, but the duration of warm periods really extended, and this meteorological summer can now be observed during the autumn month. But it's not a rule, it's more of a common trend, but there might be exclusions. For example, according to the latest observations, within 20-30 years in Ukraine, the majority of the summers they become warmer, but again, there are exceptions. For example, some autumns are warmer, but sometimes the situation is such that the cyclone is coming and the temperature becomes cooler, so we cannot discuss autumn now because we cannot look ahead longer than 10 days. It's not practical. And to finalize it, this heat wave that is coming, how long is it going to stay? So according to the calculations, until like 25th of August, it's still going to persist in the southern regions. The range of temperatures may reach like 35-37 degrees. Talking about the northern regions, including Kyiv, the peak will be up to 21st, and then there's going to be some ease for the northern regions. Thank you. So let's proceed to Mr. Oleksandr. How is the State Emergency Service preparing to the increased fire threat and this heat wave? Well, good afternoon. I want to say that State Emergency Service is always ready. We prepare to the fires in the systems, and on an annual basis there are relevant plans developed. Well, Ms. Natalia has just said about the global warming and climate change. If we may put the presentation on the screen, it's all reflected in the numbers. So the number of fires in ecosystems and open territories increased twice compared to the last year's summer. And we see that now, since the beginning of the year, we've documented 29,000 fires that resulted in death of 11 people. 34 more people were injured. Well, those fires also are added by those resulting from enemy shellings. In Kharkiv, Donetsk, Luhansk region, we've documented 1,200 such fires. And about 9,000 fires. Look, this is the overall statistics, including 9,000 fires only within last month. You remember last month it was that big heat, and this is exactly when we observe such peaks, when such heat waves are coming. During those heat waves we announce the maximum level of fire threat, what it means for the people. So for class 5 threat level, we tell the people that it's prohibited to visit the forest, it's prohibited to burn dry grass, even entering to the forest with your vehicles is prohibited because use of the machinery may result in production of sparks that result in fires. You know that there are fires when the grass is burning, but there are fires on the upper level when the tree crones are burning, and during fires like this, the other trees catch fire real quickly and they expand really quickly and can also switch to residential areas. Now our rescuers are putting out the fires in 3 regions. In Odessa region, in Dnistrovsky National Reserve, there is a huge fire in the area where cane is growing. We were able to localize it, and the fire covered about 170 hectares. Now the fire is being put out. Both machinery and firefighters, not only from State Emergency Service, are being engaged. Talking about the eastern regions, the fire is being put out in Izum forestry in Kharkiv region. Our firefighters work there in coordination with pyrotechnical units because it's exactly there in Izum forestry. When we put out the fire, we also observe the presence of explosive ordnance. This is why we have to put out the fire in coordination with pyrotechnical units in order to prevent uncontrolled detonations. The same story is with the Donetsk region. There was a shelling by MLRS in Kramatorsk district, and a huge fire is being put out. The fire was localized in the forest, and the situation is under control. The situation with all of the fires is under control. So basically, yes, we are, of course, ready, but let me give you the figures. Starting from the beginning of the year 2024, the total area of fires in the ecosystems and open territories reached more than 29,000 hectares. And if I give you the figures of State Emergency Service personnel and machinery involved, you know, it's martial law. Now we work on the fires resulting from shellings, and such fires distract our forces. 1,336 people were involved in putting out the fire within the last day, plus 316 material, but still we need to do this job, so we keep on working. So what State Emergency Service is doing in order to prevent those fires? And again, I would like to warn the citizens about the administrative liability for causing such fires. According to the Code of Ukraine on administrative liabilities, Article 137.1 contemplates that burning of vegetation results in a fine ranging from 3,000 to 6,120 hryvnia, and for violation of fire safety in the forest, the fine ranges from 1,500 to almost 4,600 hryvnia. We add more unmanned aerial vehicles to identify the fires on the initial stages, so we can take all necessary steps to put them out. 2,500 is the number of cases that we've documented when people were violating the rules of the fire safety, and I would like to say that we've penalized the violators for the total amount of more than 1 million hryvnia. 29,000 raids were implemented by the representatives of State Emergency Service in the open territories and forest massives, and those raids, they help us to identify the violators and to bring them to administrative liability. This is why, once again, it's a warning for everybody who violates the rules of the fire safety in the forest, who burns dry vegetation. Don't do it, because you first, please remain humans, treat your country and the work of the rescuers with respect, and respect the nature. So the summer threats are hiding not only in the forest, fields, and on the water, but also on the water. So what is the situation with the emergencies on the water, and what can you add for the people who are going to go to the water during this heat wave? Well, this summer, and starting from the beginning of the year, we document the number of those who died on the water to grow 22% compared to the previous year. So as the statistics demonstrate, more people started coming to the beaches because where the weather was favoring it, and it created more risks for the people, respectively. 894 people unfortunately drowned starting from the beginning of this year. This figure is 22% bigger than previous year. And started from the beginning of the August, 61 people died on water. Starting from the beginning of this month, 245 people is the number of people whom the rescuers were able to rescue. They could potentially drown. And here I would like to give the advice for everybody. Please use the equipped beaches that are identified as the swimming areas by the local authorities, because those beaches are already studied, the depth is studied, there is infrastructure created in order to rescue a person in case of emergency and prevent them from drowning. So if we look through that statistics, you know, the statistics for those who drown comes on a daily basis. So the majority of people drown in the areas that are not equipped for swimming, because the speed of current is unknown, the depth of bottom is unknown, because there is no one to rescue them, because people jump into the water without knowing the depth. And unfortunately, sometimes we document even the growth among children as well. So I would like to urge the parents to talk to their kids so they use the equipped areas for swimming, so that they swim under supervision. Also, don't swim beyond the buoys. Also, don't spend more than 20 minutes in the water in order to prevent overcooling. I mean, it's going to be pretty hot, but still. So please don't jump into the water where you don't know the depth. Don't jump from the bridges. Don't swim near the boats. And of course, never swim alone. Please use the supervision of adults or any other people who may help. Everybody knows the telephone number 101. Please call and we will respond as soon as possible in case of emergency. So this is the briefing. Thank you, Mr. Oleksandr. Probably our journalists have some questions on the floor. Well, in case we don't have any, thank you very much for informing us. Hopefully this heat wave is going to pass in a safe manner for everybody. So let me remind you, we were talking about the second heat wave in Ukraine, weather threats and warnings from rescuers, and Ukraine Media Center is going to continue next week. We are putting together the schedule for the next week. Stay tuned.